Well, Allison, it is fabulous to have you with us today. I'm just so excited about this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I'm
Yes.
so happy to be here.
Good. Well, for those of you that don't know, Allison is a regular contributor to our magazine and the Extraordinary Women magazine, and just has a wealth of information. We're going to give you a little bit of it today, but go to the magazine to hear more about Allison's suggestions and check out Allison's sites herself, her website, her Instagram. So, anyways, Allison, you're a physician turned
Yes.
coach. Yes. Tell us about that transition, because that's not a pivot I hear much of.
Yeah, so I still do both,
Oh,
but so I am a cardiothoracic anesthesiologist and I am still in practice. I recently, really just in the last few months, I started a new position for my medical job that is in a different state, different place than I've been practicing for the last almost 8 years. And I took this job because it really allows me a lot of time and space for my coaching business. So I do them concurrently. And yeah, it still has been quite the pivot because, I get a lot of feedback like, well, you're a doctor, so why don't you just do that? Isn't that good enough? And it's like,
right.
well, of course it's good enough, but I also have this other area that I'm really passionate about, which is coaching. And that stems from, my own experience as a client of coaching and how transformational that was in my life and how it continues to be transformational. So I just couldn't not share these
Mm.
tools with other women. So I really do still enjoy my clinical anesthesia practice and I really love my coaching practice. And so I'm so lucky to get to do both.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I had no idea you still did both. But
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what your own experiences with coaching were, why you went to coaching, and how it actually helped changed your life, it sounds like, in many ways. And then, that was I'm assuming, the seed or the
Mhm.
beginning of you saying, I want to bring this to others. So share a little bit
Yeah.
about what made you go call a coach? How'd you find one?
Right. Well, it's funny. So I sort of stumbled upon my first life coach that I even heard of. There is a huge physician mom Facebook group that now has like, I don't know, 120,000 women physicians in it. And so as a part of that group, I started hearing, or like reading posts chattering about this life coach. She was a pediatrician now turned life coach, and a lot of people were utilizing her services. She was a weight loss coach. And I wasn't necessarily interested in the weight loss aspect, but I was like, what is this woman doing that she has left her career in medicine and has built something so extraordinary? And so I started like listening to her podcast, and that introduced me then to other coaches, including the Life Coach School, which is where I ultimately became certified through. And I started like hearing all of these tools and techniques for sort of managing your mind. And it
Mhm.
was kind of that perfect timing because during that period of my life, I was married to my first husband, and our relationship was just very tumultuous. It
Mhm.
was sort of, it was nothing like I had expected for myself. We had 3 daughters,
Mhm.
and I had come to the conclusion that I think a lot of women sort of resign themselves to under similar situations, where I was like, well, I guess I'll just stay married to him until the kids are all grown,
Mhm.
which at the
Yes,
time, I mean, we were talking 16, 17 more years until
right.
my kids were going to be grown. And I just felt really stuck. So this life coach and the coaching world kind of fell into my lap right when I was really primed to hear what they had to offer. And so I knew that I needed help with what I was doing with my marriage and how I was feeling and how I wanted to either continue in it or ultimately not continue in it. But I started my primary coaching really started through the Life Coach School, through their kind of big subscription program type coaching. And
Okay.
then, since then, this was about 5 years ago. Since then, I've had a variety of different types of coaching. I've had personal, one-on-one coaches. I've been in groups. I've been in subscription monthly programs. I've done it all.
Yeah.
And, it really shifted how I was approaching things in my first marriage. It helped me see that I didn't really want to be married to that person. And the only thing keeping me there was fear.
Mhm.
So it helped me make the decision, which, was a very personal decision, to leave my first marriage. And
Mhm.
then coaching really got me through like the dating years and what it was like to be dating, in my mid to late 30s. And it
Mhm.
helped me, I think, ultimately find my husband that I'm married to now
Mhm.
and have an amazing relationship with him. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of how the seed was planted. You're right. It really planted the seed for me wanting to share this work with other people.
It's so interesting because your professions, one is all about the body, and maybe the mind impacts that also to some extent, healing. Obviously, you know that now. But the other is you brought up how we manage our thoughts and what
Yeah.
we think about, which is actually you talked about quite a bit in a couple of different articles, and there was and truly, I'm exhibit A. I stayed in the marriage for over 20 years for that very reason. I have to wait until my daughter is launched. And I agree with you. My life would be entirely different, as would the child's. We think we're doing the right thing, and sometimes we're not, for the children.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. But you made this comment, our romantic partnerships can be our mirrors, show us a lot about ourselves if we're willing to listen and to look.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was so incredible. So talk about that a little bit, even in terms of who you work with and
Yeah.
how you've helped people, just some of your clients.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, relationships are so central. And I think that's true for a lot of us. Like, of course, I believe that we can and should have amazing, juicy lives that are extraordinary, regardless of our relationship status. But then the
Right.
relationship can really be like the confetti at the party. Your life is the
Mhm.
party, but the relationship is the confetti. And what I see so much and has been true for me is that if you're in a relationship and it's not going well, it just has this ripple effect that's so profound on the rest of your life where you feel like you can't function optimally in the rest of your life because you're so distracted by what's going on with this
Mhm.
relationship. And I've even seen that with some of my clients who are single and they're putting a lot of their focus on wanting to have a partner. And they're kind of obsessing about that in a negative way. And then that ripples to the rest of their life too.
Mhm.
So for me, looking at my relationships in my own life and being sort of confronted with some of the truths about myself and things that were hard for me to recognize or that I would have never seen had my partner at the time not sort of brought them out in me.
Mhm.
That work alone has been life changing to really have that mirror and look at things. I mean, I had a really difficult first marriage and I'm so grateful for it because it showed
Mhm.
me so much more about myself that I don't think I ever would have seen had I not been in that relationship. So I love coaching people on their relationships because they really are brought to this place where they have to really go deep and like look at some of their stuff and work through it if they want to evolve. Now, lots of people like to just go through the motions and stay comfortable and like, comfortably uncomfortable and not really go anywhere,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
fine. But of course, people who come to me for coaching are ready to get to the next level of their life and see what's possible and expand. And their relationships are such a great tool to
Mhm.
help them, become the next version of themselves.
Well, and I think sometimes we discount the importance of relationships. I was just watching some interview with that. You probably know it as a physician, that longitudinal study at Harvard about longevity. I think it's
Mhm.
been going on for 75 years now. And so some of the people in the original part of the actual study have now passed, and there's continually people added to it. But what they talked about so much is the importance of relationships in our lives, regardless of whether or not we're partnered, whether or not we have children, whether or not, our parents have passed or we're not very close to our family. But there's this wide variety of relationships, and how important is it? Do you find, because you work with, here you are in this Facebook group with very, very successful women, is there sometimes that choice, or do we think there's a choice? I have to do the career, or I have to do or I'm going to do the relationship. How do I make them?
Yeah.
Does that come up?
Yeah, that really does. I sort of see two kind of camps of women. And, most of my clients are, women that are in medicine. They're not all doctors, but they're often in like medicine or some other sort of high achieving career. My clients are not as commonly maybe like stay-at-home moms or that group.
Yes.
So my clients and the women that I interact with, even just on a personal level, have a lot of career focus. And so I see basically two camps among them. There's the one side or the one group that has put everything into their career and has not formed a romantic partnership. They've been like, once I'm done with this part of my training, once I achieve this, next, and then I'll start dating and have a family. And then they find themselves sometimes close to 40 and they're like, did I miss the boat? Like, is it too late? And they have a lot of thoughts about that. And then there's the other group of women who have sort of done both at the same time. They've had their career and they've gotten married and had children a lot of times, which is what I did in my first marriage. I did everything at once. I had all three of my daughters during my medical training, like during med school, internship, and residency. I just had one in each stage, and so I did them concurrently. But for the majority of those women, their focus is so strongly on their career that even though they have the partner and the family, they have put very little focus on that side of their life. They've been like on this singular path to the top of their career and the achievement, and they sort of almost forget or they neglect like what's going on in the rest of their life. And then they arrive to the place where they think everything's going to be amazing because they've finished their training and they have some financial stability and they're a grown up now and they're so excited about their career achievement. And then they're like, oh my gosh, my marriage is completely ridiculously, broken now because I've neglected that aspect for so long. Or, there is also a lot of sort of mom guilt, which is such a buzzword, but, so many have also felt like they missed out on parts of their children's lives that maybe they didn't want to miss out on, or they wish they had done it differently. So there's sort of those two different groups, but either way, there's so much focus on the relationships that they want to improve. And that's why they come to me.
Yeah. Fascinating. And truly, I think it's present in so many ways, because you can be a stay-at-home mom and think you're 100% devoted. Now your career is being a mom, and you can actually, drop the ball in the other aspects of your life or the other aspects of you, because there's lots of interesting parts of us, right? It's not just, career, not just doctor, not just corporate executive, not just mom, not just daughter, not just wife or whatever. Yeah.
We get so ingrained in whatever that like self-image is that we have of who we are and like what we identify as. I am a doctor. I am a stay-at-home mom. I am so-and-so's wife. And then, at some point, a lot of us are confronted with like, who am I if one of those things goes away? So for example, in a divorce, even if it's something that you desire, you're suddenly like, wait, I used to be so-and-so's wife. Now what? Or maybe you have children that, grow up and leave the home and you're still their mom, of course, but your role of like, I am their mom taking care of little kids, that's gone. So now what? And so that kind of self-evaluation at any sort of a transition point is a really interesting thing that I love to look at, yeah.
So how did you do that though in your own life? Because your own life kind of blew up, it sounds like, in many ways. You're going to coaching, you're thinking about coaching, you're still doing, your medical practice, and your marriage is falling apart, and you got three little girls. Is it girls? Did you say
it's girls? Yeah, it's three girls.
Three babies, basically. So how did you hold Allison together through that? How did you navigate that, where you were dropping roles and adding roles almost daily?
Yeah, it was a wild time. And what's so interesting is I think at the time it felt hard, right? At the time it felt difficult. And I had a lot of support from my coaches. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, that was such a beautiful time in my life because I really felt like I reconnected to myself. So yeah, my marriage was like falling apart. My ex-husband is sort of the unfortunate type who doesn't have any coping skills for his mental health. So he's actually, when we divorced or when we separated, he disappeared. He was not and is not a part of our lives.
Oh,
So there was that whole aspect of like, not only are we doing a big change as far as getting a divorce, but now he's also just gone. And
yeah.
it's kind of, that was like something that I had to sort of come to terms with and manage for and with my daughters. But yeah, amidst all of the moving parts, I found it to be such an important time where, because I had so much good support to really look at what was going on for me with my thoughts, with my emotions, I got to know myself on a really deep level. And I got to reconnect to myself. And I wasn't, striving for my medical career. I was still doing it, but I wasn't only focused on that. I wasn't distracted by the turmoil of my marriage. I, really had this opportunity to kind of figure out like, who am I underneath all of this? If I'm not all of these other labels, who am I? And I look back on that time with such fondness now, because I felt so connected to me. And it was sort of a rebirth in a way after a lot of years of just going through the motions in my marriage and with my career and having babies and being sleep deprived and doing all the things. I came to this point where I could really step back and like reconnect to me. So it was terrible and it was amazing, all wrapped into one.
Don't you say something in one of your articles or something I've read that you wrote? We have wins and we have learnings or something like that. Describe that.
Yeah. Like if you're not winning, you're learning. Like we like to think, because of whatever culture at large or just how we're taught, that you're either winning or you're failing, and like failing is bad and failing's not acceptable. I mean, if you look at the way that we're taught in traditional school, it's like either you got a good grade or you didn't, and if you didn't, then that's bad, period, the end. Try to do better next time. And there's no like reflection of like, well, why didn't you do as well? Why did you fail that test? Which ones did you miss on the quiz? What can you learn going forward? We really don't focus on that. But I really believe that if you're not succeeding at what you're trying to accomplish in whatever area of your life, then you're learning something. And the path to the greatest success has to be paved with all those failures. I love the example of like little kids, like little babies learning to do things, learning to do anything. The one that a lot of people like to kind of talk about is like, think about a toddler learning to walk. If it didn't fall down a bunch of times and have to get back up, it would never develop the muscle strength to actually be able to walk. It has to fail in order to succeed. And so I really do believe that like every perceived, failure or thing that didn't work out the way we thought we wanted it to is really all for us to grow, learn, and evolve and be able to ultimately succeed at whatever it is.
Yeah, interesting. I love this. So share, if you can, a little bit the difference between coaching and therapy, because you, coming from a medical model, your expertise is in that, original expertise is in that area. What's different, and why did you not go that direction?
Yeah, that's so interesting, because like when I was in medical school, I never had any interest in being a psychiatrist, for example, or, and before that, I never had any interest of like, oh, I'll be a psychologist, I'll be a therapist. That just wasn't really on my radar. And I think what it is for me, and I have been to therapy myself, and it didn't always really resonate. And I know that there can be an amazing role for therapy, and there are amazing therapists out there. And for me, whenever I had gone to therapy, like many years ago, on and off, and tried it, it just didn't really land. And what I've come to realize is that it's because therapy has a primary focus on figuring out like what has happened in the past to bring you to where you are now. And let's sort through that and let's work through that. And maybe there's trauma and maybe there are big life events in the past. And that's all really important to work through. Therapy is also, part of overall psychiatric treatment. So if you have a diagnosis, a chemical imbalance, something that requires medication under the guidance of a physician, and there's, therapy in addition, then, that's its own sort of thing. But for a lot of us that are high functioning, that are doing pretty okay, like we got it going on most of the time, we have a good life. the focus of coaching is much more forward focused. It's like, okay, yes, we acknowledge the past. Yes, there is compassion for the past, whatever happened with us. But really, where are we now and where do we want to go? And so I think that's why when I found coaching, it really resonated, because the therapy stuff didn't always land for me because I didn't have really big stuff that I needed to work through. Fortunately, of course, some people do, and then it's important. For me, when I found coaching, I was like, oh, this really is, turning on something in my brain that makes a lot of sense, because I don't want to rehash past things. I don't really need to look at that stuff right now. I want to see, how do I expand from here? How do I evolve from here? And so I think that really is kind of one of the primary differences between coaching and therapy, is that coaching is a little more forward focused. Therapy is a little more past focused. Of course, there's a lot of overlap,
Sure.
and I have a lot of, clients and just people that I know that have therapists and coaches. They do the both. Some of them even have a psychiatrist and have medication and therapy and coaching. So it's really, a multifaceted approach for a lot of people, which is
and complementary. It
exactly
really helps whatever your issues are.
right.
It can be good to have your team, so to speak, that can help
Exactly.
you. So talk about, though, one of the article that you wrote in the January issue of Extraordinary Women magazine was all about, dating in your 40s and beyond. And you talked about these 4 keys. So if you don't mind, share a little bit, because this is something I think that is really important. And that relates to what you were talking about, where we sometimes get possessed. Like, I need to find somebody. And then I go on social media and I create a profile and I'm having multiple contacts with people, but it's very unfulfilling. I'm not meeting the right people. And so then you throw out, the baby with the bathwater, and you say, oh, forget it. I'm alone.
Right.
So talk about this. Talk about dating as we're older and hopefully more self-aware.
Right. Well, I love to talk about dating. My time of life when I was dating, was, beyond my 20s, like when I was dating between my 2 marriages, that was such like a beautiful time that I really, again, felt really connected to myself, and I made it a really great experience for myself. So I love to talk to people about dating and coach on dating, because I think there's so much stigma about how do I date if I'm older? How do I date if, I already have kids? What about the fact that I have a career and, good amount of money? And is that intimidating to future partners? Or is there something wrong with me that I'm not able to find someone right away? There's just so much that goes into people's mind drama about dating.
Yes.
So I think it's a really great thing to get coaching on, because if your ultimate goal when you're dating is to find a person that you want to spend a good chunk of your life with, which most women that I talk to, that is their goal. Most of them are not just into casual dating, not that there's anything wrong with that, but they are really looking for a partner. And so if that's your goal, this time that you're dating, even if it's a couple of years, it's going to be a blip on the radar of your whole long life, so it's why not really capitalize on that very short period of time relatively that you're going to have. And so I have, kind of 4 basic keys of dating in midlife that I've distilled it down to, that I see as being really important for most people, and specifically women, because that's most of who I coach. But the men could also probably relate on some level to these 2 or utilize them. And so the first one really is to date yourself, literally date yourself.
Tell me more. What does that mean?
So what I mean by that is the way that you think about when you're getting to know somebody new that you're dating, do that with yourself. Really get to know you. What do you like? What do you dislike? What do you want? What do you envision for your future? Where do you want to go to dinner? How do you want to dress? What kind of activities do you really enjoy? So it's really all about enjoying your own company and really deeply getting to know yourself. And I love, to recommend go somewhere, literally go to dinner by yourself, get comfortable being in your own company without the distraction of other people around you, because that's how you really get to know you and feel connected to you. And if you don't know who you are, or exactly what you want, it's really hard to find a partner that is in alignment with you, because you're not showing up as you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like fitting into a mold, or you don't
Yes.
know what you like. And then so how can you possibly find your person? I did a recent masterclass called Woman of Your Own Dreams, which is a
Oh.
concept that I came up with like when I was dating. Like
Mhm.
my goal is to be the woman of my dreams, to dress the
Mm.
way I want to dress, look the way I want to look, do the activities I want to do, like have the experiences that I want to have, and really be solid within myself so that
Yeah.
anybody that I attract likes who I really am and
I
not
love
some
this.
watered down version. Yeah.
Yeah, or a chameleon. So
Right.
many women I know who are trying to date in midlife or, 40s and beyond. It's like they want someone so badly, they will change. They will give up what it is that they really want to do or what it is that they really love doing, how they really want to be so that they can be attractive to a particular person, whatever that might be. That's the kind of stuff we do in junior high, and we did it in high school, and we might have done it with our first marriages to some extent. But I love this because at some point of in our lives we have to say enough of this,
Right.
enough of this. I am who I am, and that doesn't mean we show all our nasty bits
Yeah.
right up
Right.
front, but that I know who I am and I know what I love. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really cool. Okay, number two. Number
Number two, well, let me just say one more thing about number one.
Yeah.
Like, I think that we really do ourselves and the other person a disservice too when we show up inauthentically. Like, I can remember from my own dating time, I was dating a guy who was great. I'm still friendly with him. And he is like a big trail runner. And I was like, oh, yes, I can go trail running. I hate trail running. I don't want to trail run. And it's so funny because I see him now and he is with a partner and she loves the trail runs and she's very sporty. And that's not who I am. And so it was
That's
like, why
funny.
am I trying to be that? Because I don't want to be with somebody that wants to take me on trail running dates every day. So it's like, why am I doing this? So it's just, it's like,
That's
this
a
is,
great example, though, or
yeah,
someone that, you can flip on the other side, someone who wants to, drink hard liquor and go to all the bourbon places in the world, and yet you don't like that.
right.
You hate it.
Like,
So why are you
yeah.
doing it?
Right. It's like
Yeah,
life is too short to just try
yeah,
to fit into somebody else's, ideal or their lifestyle. You got to
yeah,
find your own. So,
absolutely.
um, so the second
Yeah.
key to dating in midlife that I see as really important is getting really clear on what it is that you want. Like
Mhm.
getting clear on, first of all, what is your intention with dating? Like, are you looking to just casually date? Are you wanting to just find a companion? Are you wanting to find a long-term partner? Are you really set that you must get married? And that's a super important core value that you don't want to compromise on. Like, whatever it is, get clear on what your end game is with dating, because then it makes it a lot easier when you're meeting people to figure out if they align or not. If you're like, hey, I don't really want a commitment and I'm just here to, meet people, and you are interacting with someone who definitely wants to get married, that might not always be compatible. So that's something important to know about yourself, is to really get clear on what your ultimate goal is. And then to also get clear on like what it is that you're looking for in a partner. And when I say this, lots of women are like, well, he's 6'2", he has black hair and blue eyes, and he has, multi six-figure job, and his
Yeah,
credit
yeah,
score is 800. And you're like, this is not what I mean.
yeah.
This is not the point. The point is not a laundry list of just like physical, superficial characteristics, but like what is important to you in the essence of the person?
Mm.
Like, what are the core values? Or, how do you feel when you're around the person? I actually have a little meditation about this, which is in that January article, the link to it. But it's like a meditation to kind of like get into your own brain and your own heart and your own soul and really envision like, who is this partner that I'm looking for and what characteristics do they embody? Not like, do they have a six pack, but
Right.
who are they at their essence?
Mm.
Because again, this is a great screening tool of like, okay, I'm looking for somebody who has this, and this, or that I feel this way in their presence, or, shares these values. And then you can meet the most amazing man who doesn't have that, and you'll be like, oh, he's an amazing man, but he's not my man. Good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, as a woman of a certain age, the six packs don't hang around. So,
Right.
so you have to fall in love with something more than the six pack and the black hair.
I know, right? That's so funny. That's what my husband says now. He's like, things just aren't the same. Like
Yeah.
with my body, I can just tell, like, someday this is all just not going to be anything like this. It's already sliding down. I'm like,
That's
okay.
right.
Luckily, I love who he is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love this though. It's just so, in many ways, it's applicable to all relationships, that you show up, whether it's your adult children and, your adult son now has a wife, and you're developing a relationship with a new daughter-in-law, knowing yourself, getting clear on your intentions, all of that can help you to actually up level that relationship too, which is
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely. Yeah. It all applies to all the relationships, really.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Okay, so head to number three.
So number three, this one, it kind of sounds funny, so I'll explain it, but it is channel the playful scientist. So what I mean by that is like you want to get in the vibe of, first of all, this can be like a science experiment. And I'm a scientist, so this is like my nerd side coming out. But can you view dating as like one big experiment? You're just finding out, do I like this or do I like that? Is this a deal breaker? Is it not? Do I prefer somebody with this quality or this quality? Like it's all just an experiment of, getting to know more about yourself. It's not like this idea that, oh no, this relationship isn't going to work out and that's terrible. I mean, maybe it's sad. And of course, you can have those emotions too. But it's also like, oh, good to know that guy that loves trail running, he's just not my guy. And I don't want to do that, even though he's great. So sort of embodying this energy of like, this is all a fun experiment to teach me what I really want and don't want is so important. And then the playful part is like, this is not meant to be so serious.
Yeah,
Like you can have fun and experiment along the way, and it's not going to go the exact path that you imagine in your mind. You can't possibly know, like, how many people do you have to go on a first date with before you find your person? How many people are you going to talk to before you narrow it down to like the few that you really enjoy? I mean, you just have no idea. So be playful along the way.
yeah, yeah.
Let it.
Love that. Playful scientist. It's really a juxtaposition, if I'm
Yeah.
saying that correctly,
Yes.
of
Yeah.
two different sides of our brains, actually. So,
Yeah, which I think is like so easy for me because that's kind of like who I am. I'm very
yeah,
playful and I'm a scientist and I love the, facts and the science of lots of things. And I love to, make every experience as enjoyable as I can whenever
yeah,
possible. So maybe
yeah.
that's why.
Well,
Um,
also, it fits with your concept of, or your communication of, it's you're either winning or you're learning,
yeah,
so even those people that you come across that you don't connect with once you actually meet them, whether they're the trail runner and that's what doesn't mesh, or it's something else much bigger than that in lots of ways. It's a learning experience. It's not a, oh God, this will never work.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
And number four is,
Yes, that brings us to number four, which is have fun. For
mm,
goodness sakes, my gosh, like this is not meant to be heavy. This is not something that you're obligated to do. This
yeah,
is not a chore. I think that so many people and women, especially women at midlife, they're like, oh, I guess I have to date. And like, I guess I have to go on those apps. And there's
mhm.
probably no one good on there anyway. And it's like, well, wait a minute, aren't you on there? First of all, like you're pretty good. But it's like this
Good
is
point.
not some thing on our list to do. This is something that's supposed to be fun. And like, if you can view your period of life during which you're dating, like if you can view it as this really special time that is a
Mhm.
blip on the radar, like I said, then why not really enjoy it? And like that trail runner, he was so great. We had a great time. He's a good guy. I'm so glad I got to know him. Some other guy that I went out with that turned out to be like kind of weird, but it's a
Mm,
pretty funny story to tell. There's just no matter what is happening during your dates, like there's always going to be something good that comes from it. And can you just enjoy it because it's a short-term process,
yes,
even if it takes multiple years, it's still a relatively short process. So can
yeah,
you just enjoy the getting to know people, enjoy getting to know yourself and make it as fun as it can be?
yeah. Now, pivot a little bit because you also work with people who are married, people
Yeah.
who are in a serious relationship that are trying to figure out, how do I improve this? How do I up-level this relationship? Um,
Mhm.
I think you write about that in the April issue that's coming out of
Mhm.
Extraordinary Women. But talk about that. Talk about how that's different. And and please bring in your Byron Katie
Oh
example. I
yeah,
love Byron Katie.
I know. I love
Oh
her
my
too.
goodness, her question
Yeah.
is huge,
Yeah. Yeah.
very significant.
So
Yeah.
I do work with a lot of people that are already in relationships. I mean, that's probably the bulk of my
Oh,
clients. You know, there's a good section of single and ready to mingle type clients that want help
mhm.
with dating, but there is probably the majority that are already in either married or in a relationship. And so all of the things that I just talked about as far as dating, they can be flipped to be applied if you're married. Like, really get to know yourself, be comfortable with yourself. When you are your best, that energy translates into your partnership. Get clear on like what is it that you're really wanting with your marriage or your partnership. Like view it as a fun, playful
Mhm.
experiment. All that stuff can apply even if you're partnered.
Definitely.
But then yeah, like what I really talk about in the April article that's coming out is how to kind of refresh your relationship. And what the focus of the article is, and what I think is a really important place to start for anybody who's feeling a little bit stuck or stagnant in their relationship, or just like they want it to be better than it is
Mhm.
to really look at like, what are you thinking and feeling
Mm.
about your partner and your relationship? And so a place that I have a lot of my clients start is to kind of like just do a download of all the things that they're thinking about their marriage, their partner, like get it all out there. Even if you're writing down horrible things that you would
Right.
never want anybody to see, like nobody has to see them. You can burn this later if you want to,
Mhm.
but like write down, like really, what are the things that you're thinking? Like, what are your true thoughts about your marriage and your partnership? Because even if you are good at quote unquote hiding those things or pushing them away, if you have these sort of like a negative soundtrack about your partner or your marriage running in the background, that is going to show up in your interactions.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If
Mhm.
you think my husband doesn't pay enough attention to me, and that's in the background of your mind, then the way that you're going to show up is probably in a way that is disconnected from him. There might be resentment, or you might be, kind of walling yourself off, and you just have sort of this low vibe that then maybe he doesn't seem as receptive, or you're pushing him away, and then self-fulfilling prophecy, he's not paying attention to you. Like this is how it works. And so I love for people to just really get clear, like just write down all the stuff that you're thinking, really
Mhm.
look at what's going on in your mind about your partner and your relationship, and then using the work of Byron Katie and sort of a partial paraphrase of it, but Byron Katie has this series of like several questions that she'll go through with her clients, and she has a book about it, and it's,
Mhm.
in all of her work. But basically, like when you write down thoughts about your marriage or your partner, then you ask yourself, is this thought true? Like, is this for sure true? Somebody might have the thought, like, my husband doesn't care about me,
Mhm.
therefore he doesn't, do the dishes or whatever. It's
Mhm.
like, is that really true? And most of the time, when you ask yourself that honestly, without judgment, you're like, I guess that's probably not true. He probably does care about me. He's still here, right?
Right.
Um, and then you ask yourself, is it a helpful thought? Like, even if you decide, oh, this is for sure true, I'm going to believe this thought is true, or if you don't think it's true, but is it a helpful thing to think? Does it help
Mhm.
anybody if you're thinking my husband doesn't care about me?
Mm.
Probably not, because it sets you up to show up in a way that is just really disconnected, and it's not you showing up as the best you.
Well, and our brains are such, that reticular activating system, where we say we want to buy a blue car and we suddenly see a million blue cars out there. So if we have a thought, my husband isn't paying any attention to me, or my husband doesn't care about me, the brain looks for ways to justify that statement unless you can derail it with the
Yes,
question, like you just
uh,
said. It's really interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, our brains are these like crazy computers that are just so immensely complex and elegant. And they have this internal programming of basically proving whatever you're thinking true, because that just seems like a good idea, right?
Right.
Our brain wants to be right. Like, so if you're thinking something, your brain's like, okay, I'm going to go to work and find that. If you're like, I'm buying this red Corvette or whatever, you're
Right.
going to see them everywhere. And if you're thinking, my husband doesn't pay attention to me, then every little thing that he does that could seem like inattention, you're going to be like, see, there's
There it
one,
is.
there's one, there's one. And you're going to accumulate evidence subconsciously.
Mhm.
Versus when you really step back and you're like, wait, is this even true? And even if it is it helpful to think? You put a
Mm.
little distance. Then when you notice that thought come in, because it's a default thought that you've practiced a lot and your brain is so efficient at thinking the same thoughts, when you're like, oh, my husband isn't paying attention to me, you can catch it and be like, wait a minute, brain, hold
Mhm.
up. Is that true? No. Is that helpful? No. Here's what we might want to think instead. And you can kind of gradually shift. And then, the third question I ask is, and from Byron Katie, is like, what would I do or who would I be if I didn't believe that thought?
Mm.
So,
Mm.
like, if I didn't think, oh, my husband doesn't care about me, or if I didn't think he doesn't pay attention to me, or whatever it is,
Mhm.
like, how would things be different? How would I be showing up? How would I feel differently? And when you
Mhm.
start to really get honest with yourself, you see that, yes, your husband or your partner has his own thoughts and feelings and actions and, stuff that's going on. But so much of your experience of that, really your whole experience of that, is based on how you're thinking about it, and you get to choose. And
Wow.
so then after you kind of do this process, you have the opportunity to then pick some more intentional thoughts that are actually useful to think. So that then when your brain offers the default and it's like on its like
Mhm.
super highway, neurosynapse that it's used to thinking, and it's like, oh, he doesn't care about you. You can be like, hold on, that's not true or helpful. I'm actually choosing to think he does care about me. And then you rewire your brain
Mm.
over time with practice, with deliberate attention, to start thinking the new thought on
Mm.
purpose.
Mm.
And it's a really amazing function of our brain called neuroplasticity that we literally can rewire our brain by shifting our attention. And it's not just a thing for like little kids with developing brains. This is a concept that's been proven true in studies all the way into our 90s.
Oh
It's never
my.
too late to rewire. Yeah. So, like, you can, when you bring awareness to your current default thoughts that you just think are true, and then you realize
Mhm.
that they're not just true, they're just thoughts, you can shift. And over time, that shift creates new circuitry in your brain,
Wow.
literally new synaptic connections. So it's pretty
Which is
amazing.
pretty fabulous, whether it's relationships or it's how we're looking at our particular stage of life or our particular situation or whatever. I mean, I love that. Into our 90s, the brain can change, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's that's hope. That's hope in a bottle, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know.
like anything you want is possible. And this process that I just said
Mhm.
of like getting the thoughts out and looking at them with that framework and picking an intentional thought, that can apply to anything
Anything.
in your life,
Mhm.
anything that you want to work on, health, finances, like whatever it is, it's all
Yeah.
subject to be changed.
Great. Okay, so now tell everyone how they can work with you, what your offerings are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this sounds fantastic, actually.
Well, amazing. Yay. Well, so I hang out a lot on Instagram at
Okay.
Allison Anderson Coaching. I'm also
Okay.
on Facebook under that same name. And I do have a private Facebook group for any, high achieving woman, whatever that means to you, who
Mhm.
wants to be in a space to kind of talk all things relationships. My private Facebook group is called Up Level Your Relationships. And you can
Okay.
find it on Facebook and ask to join. That's also the name of my podcast, where I have, juicy info every week.
Love that.
And my website is AllisonAndersonCoaching.com. And if you go there and look at the free resource section, I have a few different little guides that can be downloaded on confidence, reigniting the romance, having more pleasure in your life. There's a bunch of different little freebies there that people can choose from if they want more info.
But what if they want to work with you? What?
Yeah, if they want to work with me, they can go on either my website, AllisonAndersonCoaching.com, and get in touch there, or on Instagram or Facebook is great. Send me a message. Like,
Okay.
I love to talk to my people directly. I
Mhm.
don't do a lot of like, here's a complicated sales page about blah, blah. Like, I just want to have a conversation with you.
Yep.
So if you are
Perfect.
interested, you just find me on one of those platforms and say hello
Okay.
and tell me what's up, and we'll have an exchange and see if we're a good fit and get on a call maybe or
Great.
whatever it is. So
I
yeah,
love
I'm
it.
pretty organic about it.
Yeah, yeah, this is fantastic. Well, Allison, thank you. Thank you. This is just fabulous information, regardless of where we are in our lives and with our relationships. So I so appreciate your time today and your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me, Sharri. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure.